Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. Prebis Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
With insurance companies dropping customers and pulling out of California, some homeowners are now going for an out-of-state solution. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and we're not talking about moving out of California. Some homeowners are buying policies from out-of-state carriers that aren't licensed to do business here. But as KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne explains, that coverage comes with a risk.
When Pete Alexakis moved to Fallbrook 11 years ago, there was a hook that got him.
There was an advertisement about Fallbrook being one of the last areas where you could buy a little bit of land and be close to the ocean.
His home is surrounded by green rolling hills and trees. To him and his family, beautiful views. But for insurance companies, extreme fire hazard.
11 years ago, we had choices, so we were able to get from one of the Berkshire Hathaway companies a preferred homeowners policy with, full coverage and good rates.
But in December, he got a non-renewal notice from his insurer. The company said it was because of the fire danger. He was forced to join California's FAIR plan for basic fire coverage only. For coverage in other areas, he got an additional policy from a separate company.
And the impact was profound. We couldn't, if we were going to try and compare apples for apples with coverages that we had before, it would have been probably an 80% increase in cost. So what we did was we offset some of that expense by going, tremendously higher with deductibles and foregoing some other coverages just to make it affordable, frankly.
He's not alone. Insurers like State Farm and Allstate have been offloading their California clients. And while officials in Sacramento tried to reach a compromise with the insurance agencies, homeowners are left with limited options.
Well, it just depends on every individual client and their family and their financial needs. So that really varies, but the higher of a deductible you have, the lower your premium is going to be.
Ashley Beyer-Walasek is an insurance broker in Fallbrook. For fire coverage, she says most homeowners are going with the California FAIR plan and then filling in coverage gaps with other policies for things like water, theft, or liability. There's another option, known as non-admitted policies. These come from out-of-state companies that aren't licensed to do business in California.
What that means is they are not held to the same regulatory financial stability laws that we have here. But they're also able to kind of insure riskier ventures, or whether it be a fire area or if it's a commercial policy.
She says non-admitted carriers can be a good option for homeowners in fire risk areas, but there could be another risk.
If the company becomes insolvent or goes bankrupt and they are not able to pay out the claims that you're paying the coverage for, you are not able to, as a California resident, to go to the state to either appeal or, kind of fight back to help get any help from the state.
But she says many non-admitted carriers have good financial stability and insurance ratings. It all comes down to doing the research for the coverage and price a homeowner wants and can afford.
People who have fixed incomes, it's very difficult to then see their premium, triple in a year, and their incomes aren't increasing. But
homeowners are having to make tough decisions.
I can't believe that an insurance policy and not being able to afford it is dictating your moves in life. So
uninsured or underinsured, and others are choosing to sell their home and move out of California. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
Property losses are adding up in the wake of 2 hurricanes. Coming up, we hear from one expert who says increasingly severe storms may serve as a wake-up call for policyholders.
Well, looking ahead to tonight, we're dropping down to lows into the 60s, low to mid 60s there along the coast. The marine layer is going to be deepening here over the next few days, so we are still talking about some low cloud cover, especially late in the day and early in the day. So just give yourself some extra time if you're traveling late or early. We're going to be breaking down, though, temperatures. Some places going to be cooling down as we head into the weekend.
Mayor Todd Gloria and San Diego police say crime-fighting surveillance technology appears to be working. According to data released by police today, smart street lights and automated license plate readers have helped solve 229 cases, and that resulted in 166 suspects being taken into custody and 163 stolen cars recovered. Privacy advocates have spoken out against using the technology, calling the cameras mass surveillance.
We respect their opinion, we try and take in their input, but the bottom line is this: most San Diegans, the vast majority of San Diegans, understand the use of this technology and why it's so critical to keeping us all safe.
We're moving now at a pace that's from minutes to hours versus days to weeks in getting people in custody. And that is how you prevent future crimes from occurring.
SDPD says the cameras are not actively monitored and that data is permanently deleted within 13 days for smart street lights and 30 days for automatic license plate readers. That is if the video is not used for investigations. The Navy tested a new at-sea missile reloader on Friday. KPBS military reporter Andrew Dyer was at Naval Air Station North Island and has more.
Secretary of the Navy Carlos Del Toro was in town Friday. He flew to the guided missile cruiser USS Chosin as it sailed off the coast. For the first time, the Navy showed it could transfer missiles ship to ship while at sea, something now only done with ships in port. He says the transferable rearming at sea method, or TRAM, will be a major breakthrough in how the Navy's guided missile ships operate.
By enabling our combatants to refill their magazines while they're underway, TRAM offers us a powerful near-term deterrent that will disrupt the strategic calculus of those who would do us harm around the globe.
For the last year, the Navy's surface force has been busy in the Red Sea as Houthi rebels from Yemen attacked ships with drones and missiles. Del Toro says the operational tempo of those ships shows the need for the technology.
Without the ability to rearm at sea, our surface combatants must return to port, sometimes thousands of miles away. As we sometimes have to do in the Red Sea, after we shoot the missiles, we have to go back to other ports in order to rearm.
For decades, the Navy's used supply ships to transfer fuel and cargo to warships at sea. But safety concerns and the limits of technology meant destroyers and cruisers would need to go into a port to rearm or reload. These Navy supply ships are crewed by civilians called merchant marines, but a shortage of qualified mariners has strained the Navy's supply fleet. Del Toro says a lot of people left the Merchant Marines during the pandemic, and he's hoping Congress acts to fill in the gap by passing the SHIPS Act.
That act will probably be introduced sometime later this year, and hopefully whether it's this year or the beginning of 2025 or throughout 2025, we'll be able to pass the SHIPS Act that then will give us the authorities and the resources that we need to probably take care of our merchant mariners who serve in our military Sealift Command.
This new rearming capability is still developing. The service will need to fund the program and refit its ships for it to integrate into normal operations. Del Toro says he's hopeful that happens by 2029. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
You may have heard of Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation's policy agenda for the next conservative president. KPBS is taking a closer look at what's in it and what it would mean for our region. In the first story of our series, a San Diego education leader tells KPBS's Amita Sharma Project 2025 could gravely impact local campuses.
Project 2025 seeks to dismantle the Department of Education and have the Department of Justice enforce laws related to students with disabilities as well as civil rights protections. It would eliminate protections for LGBTQ students, and it would get rid of Head Start, a program that offers health services and helps feed young children living in poverty. San Diego Unified School District Board Vice President Cody Peterson says there is a racial element to Project 2025's proposals.
If you see who's victimized by these efforts, they're predominantly, or at least disproportionately, students of color, families of color, because we can see the correlations between poverty and disadvantage and race and ethnicity in America.
The plan also advocates for universal private school choice, which Peterson says has been a long-standing goal of the conservative movement, with one aim.
Moving $60 billion at the federal level is not how you destroy public education. You destroy it by essentially universalizing vouchers.
Former President Donald Trump has renounced Project 2025, but he has also praised the Heritage Foundation, which wrote it, and said in 2022 it is laying the foundation for what his movement will do. The organization declined an interview. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
And this story is part of KPBS's Public Matters partnership with Voice of San Diego and iNewsSource. You can see more of our coverage at kpbs.org/publicmatters. Election Day is just 3 weeks away from tomorrow. Both campaigns are reviewing data and sharpening their messages to voters in key states in real time. Karen Kafa has this look at their strategies.
Kamala Harris's campaign starting the week with outreach to black men. Donald Trump's campaign putting immigration in the spotlight, and both campaigns pushing in Pennsylvania. Vice President Kamala Harris elaborating on her campaign promise of an opportunity economy Monday, unveiling proposals aimed at expanding job opportunities and entrepreneurship for black men. And in an interview with Roland S. Martin, drawing policy contrasts with her opponent, former President Donald Trump.
Look at it in the context of how he actually thinks and talks about black folks in America.
Harris's proposals come as polls show her lagging behind President Joe Biden's numbers with black voters in 2020, especially black men. The campaign eyeing new national polls that show a dead heat with 3 weeks to go before Election Day. And as Trump escalates messaging on immigration and attacks on Biden-Harris border policy in key swing states like Arizona.
And what they've done to us and what they've done to us on the border can never be forgiven.
Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, spent some of the weekend in North Carolina, including a visit to the Charlotte Motor Speedway. The state begins early voting on Thursday when Democratic vice presidential candidate Governor Tim Walz will campaign in the state. The Harris-Walz campaign also sent Bill Clinton on a two-day Georgia tour aimed at driving up margins in rural areas of the state.
That's what this election coming down to. If you want it bad enough, you can win it.
And both campaigns spending time in Pennsylvania this week, a state that, along with Michigan and Wisconsin, is seen as a potential tipping point in the presidential race. Underscoring the importance of the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, with visits from both presidential candidates on Monday. Kamala Harris in the western portion of the state with remarks in Erie. Donald Trump on the east side of the state with an economic town hall in the Philadelphia suburbs. At the White House, I'm Karen Kafa.
Fast food and healthcare workers are getting minimum wage hikes. Voters can increase it for all workers from $16 to $18 an hour. Cal Matters reporter Jeannie Kwong explains Prop 32.
For years, low-wage workers organized around a $15 minimum wage. But by the time California got there in 2022, it already didn't seem enough. The cost of living had skyrocketed. Startup investor and anti-poverty advocate Joe Sandberg wanted a gradual increase to $18 in 2025, but his measure missed a deadline 2 years ago, so it's before voters now. A lot has changed since then. I'm Jeannie Kwong, Capitol reporter for Cal Matters, and this is Prop 32 in a minute. If it passes, it would have a smaller impact than envisioned. In the past 2 years, many businesses have raised wages on their own. Inflation pushed the minimum wage up to $16 this year. And workers in healthcare and fast food have won their own minimum wages beyond $18. But Sandberg, unions, and other advocates say Prop 32 will still help 2 million workers get a raise and afford the basics. According to the MIT Living Wage Calculator, the average single Californian with no children needs to make more than $27 an hour to afford basic needs. Business groups, restaurant owners, and grocers are opposed. They say employers who can't stay afloat will have to cut workers' hours or raise prices. They point to surveys in West Hollywood, where the minimum wage is $19.08, as an example. Now, that is one city. In a recent statewide study, economists have found less evidence that wage hikes cause job losses. So vote yes on Prop 32 if you want to raise the minimum wage to $18 next year. Vote no if you want to keep things the way they are. To learn more about everything on your 2024 ballot, go to calmatters.org.
If you'd like to learn more about what's on the November ballot, we've got you covered. Just go to kpbs.org/voterhub. Well, analysts predict insured losses following Hurricanes Helene and Milton could cost tens of billions of dollars. Uninsured losses, billions more. As Laura Aguirre explains, increasingly frequent severe weather events may serve as a policy wake-up call, especially when it comes to flood coverage.
Nobody is immune to flooding in the United States.
Nowhere is that more devastatingly apparent than in the southeastern U.S., where a 1-2 punch by Hurricanes Helene and Milton have left entire regions across 6 states completely decimated.
Unfortunately, most of the losses we are seeing from the tragedy of Hurricane Helene are not insured.
Those uninsured Helene-related losses could reach $30 billion, according to one assessment by CoreLogic. In the mountains of western North Carolina, where entire towns were washed away by historically high flooding, many residents did not carry flood insurance.
If they don't live in a coastal area, they figure they're safe.
Mark Friedlander of the Insurance Information Institute says Helene's catastrophic aftermath serves as a reminder for everyone to review their homeowners policy.
No matter where you live in the country, you need to own your risk, meaning you need to understand the potential hazards you might face in your community,
such as regions with higher wildfire risk or frequent tornado activity. But Friedlander also points out
your standard property insurance policy does not cover flood. That's why you need to have separate coverage. And that's true nationally.
And that's true because
if it rains at your home, it could flood at your home.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Laura Aguirre.
Living in California, we all have to be mindful about being prepared in the event of an earthquake. This Thursday is California ShakeOut Day. It's a day to learn about earthquake safety. The Office of Emergency Services is on a 3-stop tour beginning today in San Diego. On the campus of UCSD today, people can step into an earthquake simulator that can simulate an event as high as 7.0.
So you can imagine significant shaking, kind of equivalent to a Universal Studio ride where you get to sit down, you can hold on to handles, it's very safe, but it gives you a real life experience of what it's like to feel a severe earthquake. We also have a lot of earthquake preparedness information, some tools, some giveaways, lots of material, so come out and learn more how to get prepared for the next earthquake.
It's also an opportunity for Californians to learn about alert services, including the state's early warning system. You can get the alerts by downloading the My Shake app. It is Indigenous Peoples Day, and this month Carlsbad's New Village Arts Center is showing its first work by a Native American playwright. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson says it spotlights the hypocrisies of woke America.
Before we were blind to race, and now we totally see it.
In Larissa Fast Horse's The Thanksgiving play, well-intentioned people try to create an elementary school Thanksgiving pageant that won't ruffle any feathers.
And things go bad.
Director Danielle Jaquez says the play is meta. Fast Horse wrote it for white actors, knowing it would be easier to get produced.
Nobody wanted to produce her plays because they didn't think there was an Indigenous actor community or theater community out there, where we know that there's a lot.
Which is part of the play's plot, too.
I just checked your Native American Heritage Month grant, and it doesn't explicitly say that you have to use it for a Native American person.
Really?
As long as we do something that honors Native Americans for November, you're good to keep the money. Problem solved.
It's full of secondhand cringe. And maybe, Jaquez hopes, some firsthand cringe, too.
We question our whiteness and question who wrote our history and what our traditions come from.
It runs through November 3rd. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
Well, let's start you off with your weather headlines, where we break down the top stories here as we head throughout the week. That marine layer is going to be deepening here, so we are talking about that low cloud cover thickening here, especially late and early in the day, even spreading there across our western valleys. Though overall, we aren't really going to be seeing too many changes here day to day along the coast and further inland. Though as we head into the middle and later half of the week into the weekend, temperatures are going to be taking a little bit of a dive if you're in the mountains or if you're in the deserts. You're going to feel those changes here certainly as we start the weekend. Now for tonight, we're dropping down to lows in the 60s there along the coast. Oceanside, you're at 60 tonight. San Diego bottoming out at 63. Ramona even cooler at 49, and Mount Laguna 54. Borrego Springs, you're down to 61. Now as we head into tomorrow, highs going to be rising back to the 90s there in areas like Borrego Springs. Mount Laguna, you're going to be sitting in the 60s. Plenty of sunshine here to go around. Highs topping off at 70 in Oceanside and San Diego. Now we don't really have too much to worry about when it comes to precipitation wise here over the next few days, but we do have this storm that's going to be sliding south here, bringing with it of course more rain and even some snow further north across the northern Rockies and the Cascades. Further south though, it is going to be a little windy. Fire weather danger here, especially across the Intermountain West, going to be an issue here. Now along the coast, mostly sunny here as we head throughout the day on a Tuesday. We'll have a few more clouds there by Wednesday. High it's going to be rising to a 73 with periods of sun. And then by Friday, Saturday, high is going to be sitting in the mid to upper 70s. It's going to be rather pleasant, but again, watch out for those low clouds. Further inland, a similar story. Highs not going to be changing too much here day to day, sitting in the mid 70s even as we start the weekend, though you will start to see those temperatures dip if you're in the mountains. Cooler there by Thursday with a high of 54, even cooler by Friday, switching those numbers around with a high of 45. And then by Saturday, a little warmer with a high of 61. Though the deserts, you're going to be dropping down to the 70s here as we top off the work week with a high of 79. KPBS, for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Bree Guy.
Dracula, the infamous bloodsucker of Bram Stoker's Victorian novel, gets a comic transfusion courtesy of the Old Globe. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando goes behind the scenes to speak with the actors, bringing the show to life.
Hi, I'm Beth Accomando, and I'm here at the Old Globe Theater to talk about Dracula, a comedy of terrors. And I'm going to be speaking with actors George Crissa and Drew Droege. And
I'm so sorry, Beth. Before we start, George, is playing Dracula, and I'm a little worried that he's a little too good. I think he might be turning into a vampire. He's so good, and it's just a lot. A lot of things are sort of happening right now, and a lot of hissing and growling. So I just wanted to give you a couple things. This is a stake. You can plunge that into his heart. Okay. And I'm going to keep this for me. This is holy water. Just fling that in his general direction. I just, want you to have a good interview.
All right, thank you.
Let's have fun.
All right. Well, we're going to go inside and talk to George. Hi, George.
George Crissa is exposing audiences to a sexy new version of Dracula.
I am highly desirable.
There's something very seductive about the way that he's been written and the way that he's been played, that he's a lover. It's like, again, kind of seductive that he bites you on the neck. Like how beautiful and vulnerable is that?
Well, I was talking about the varicose veins in your neck.
My neck? Oh, what a refreshing compliment.
Crissa sinks his teeth into a sexy and funny version of the iconic vampire for Dracula, a comedy of terrors, which is not really referencing Bram Stoker's blood-sucking count, but rather our collective pop culture knowledge of vampires.
I think we grew up with some version of Dracula or another. I think my very first one would be the Count from Sesame Street.
I am the Count. Do you know why they call me the Count? Because I love to count things.
Which is probably where I get my accent from.
Good evening. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Count Dracula.
Playing opposite Crissa's Dracula is Drew Droege as the Count's nemesis, Dr. Van Helsing.
Hello there. So nice to meet you. You must be Mrs. Van Helsing.
Dr. Van Helsing.
I think it is the very first that I know of drag Van Helsing. Happy to be part of that lineage.
I sent for Dr. Jean Van Helsing, as in Jean Valjean.
No, you sent for Dr. Jean Van Helsing, as in Jean Valjean.
I never feel like the gender is the joke. A lot of times I play women at, just for the laughs, but in this show, there's a lot of like girl power and feminism, and it's a lot of fun
Part of that fun is tapping into another pop culture reference, Cloris Leachman's Frau Blucher in Young Frankenstein.
What was great in rehearsal is that we absolutely had no dialogue coach whatsoever, and they gave us free rein to just like commit and pick a voice, because again, that's the spirit of the show. It's sort of like, we also, you know, the show is, we're a company of actors who come out and say,
on behalf of theater management, we've been asked to issue a friendly warning.
We're about to unfold the story of Dracula.
A bloodthirsty monster who plays God with helpless victims,
draining them of life to extend his own.
The result is a high-energy farce that runs with the precision of a Swiss watch.
This script is verbal farce. One or can ruin the rhythm of the line. You have to really be on top of each other's energy, because otherwise it does go haywire.
The energy is palpable in the Globe's intimate theater in the round, where the audience can be just inches away from the actors.
Well, I think what's really great about doing it in the round is that there's no place to hide. So you have no choice but to be completely invested the entire time. And there's moments when we can really take the audience in and make them a part of it, so that we're all kind of in on the same thing.
Chris has been embracing his role as the vampiric count with a meticulous sense of detail that I have to say is terrifyingly good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Beth does it again. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.